Dr. Ben has come to the university at a very important time for a number of reasons. Aside from the very pertinent and powerful information that he will provide, the university is in the throes of a discussion about diversity and the need for larger numbers of African American students as well as students of Latino descent at the university, in addition to increasing the number of faculty and staff members here. And so I think Dr. Ben being here at this time is very important because it will hopefully expand and provide some light for those individuals who will benefit by it most. Another reason I think it's important for Dr. Ben to be here is because when we talk about our family, when we talk about where we are at this particular point in time in history, we are faced with some very difficult circumstances. And sometimes in trying to overcome our adversity, we need to find a way to look at our history, to understand where we've been historically in order to be able to utilize some of the lessons from the past to overcome the adversity that we face at the moment. And Dr. Ben clearly is very capable of doing that for us. The third reason that I think that it's important that he's here is because the university is in need of some scholars who can provide enlightenment to some of the students that are here. I've only been here a short period of time. I've had a chance to meet with some of the faculty members that are here, and I think that they do an excellent job, but I think that someone of Dr. Ben's ilk would be able to spark a fire in some of them that I don't think is lit yet. And hopefully this evening, the students, after hearing Dr. Ben, will go and place some demands in front of the administration that maybe we can coax him out of retirement a little bit. For those of you that may not know, Dr. Ben retired from Cornell in 1988. He has a PhD in cultural anthropology, PhD in Moorish history, a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, a master's degree in architectural engineering, and an LLB, which is a bachelor's law degree. For some of you who may not be initiated with the First World Alliance, Dr. Ben was one of the founders of the First World Alliance. And for those people who still use the term Third World, I'm sure Dr. Ben will chastise you about that this evening. He will tell you very clearly that we are of the First World. In addition to that, Dr. Ben has worked with UNESCO and has just been given an appointment by the governor of Aswan, where there will be a Nubian festival beginning in 1991, which he is the primary person who is coordinating that. And I think one of the reasons that Nancy asked me to introduce Dr. Ben is I had the privilege of traveling to Egypt with Dr. Ben 5 years ago. And having the good fortune of having traveled to various places in the world, but the trip to Egypt was a transfiguring one, because we often are told about our history and about how great our ancestors' achievements were. But when you go to Egypt, and when Ben will show you on the pyramids and in the Valley of the Kings and in Aswan all of the wonderful accomplishments that our ancestors made, you overcome any of the adversity that you've had to deal with in this country. And so it is an honor and a privilege to pay homage publicly to someone who has been very important in my life and hopefully into the lives of all of you in the room. Please give a warm African round of applause to our brother, people's historian, Dr. Ben.
Good evening. I would ask that someone, yourself, give me a hint as to when to wind up for the question and answer period. To think that the African people can present their history in 28 days. And it takes 360 days to present Greece and Rome is a travesty. When there were African civilization in their decline, Greece or Rome did not exist. When Africans were worshipping deities, both male and female, Jehovah, Jesus nor Allah didn't exist, nor the people projecting them existed. And yet, we are asked another year to present all of this history in 28 days. To send a communication to me in symbols called writing or alphabetic script. When my people originated language and made the first letters 1 to 9 is an insult. And NYU is as equally guilty as any other institution. You know, if one is to deal with truth, it's going to be very difficult to ask the people who give the concept of God, the people who give it, and I know that the other day I was reading again in room 34 in the museum in Cairo, second floor, a little note there from Gaston Maspero, and he was speaking about Mahepa. Mahepa was one of the cousins to the Pharaoh and Queen, or Queen Pharaoh, Makere Hatshepsut, which will bring us into the 18th dynasty, about 1530, 1480. And Maspero, trying to describe him, said he was one of the few people presented black in the Book of the Dead rather than a normal red. But a further look at his mummy showed, quote, he was Negroid, but not actually Negro. Very amusing indeed. But to present these people, I am sure that one will say the same thing about Jesus Christ when Pope Julius asked Michelangelo to change his Negroidness to not actually blackness for the Vatican. So let us try to look at these people who we are going to take 28 days, in this case much less than that, to look at them in a world picture. A few years ago at City College, a conference was called An Ancient History. The qualification was that a nation had to be at least 3,000 years before the Common Era to qualify. That meant that we didn't have a representative from Europe, because Greece would only be 1,000 at best, and Rome equally. So we operated with the European professors representing Asia. Of course, Egypt was to be represented, and we didn't find anyone for Egypt, even though I was there, because I wasn't a guest, but the main guest didn't show, so I got guested from the floor. And then when I started to represent Egypt as an African country, I was told that Egypt is in the Middle East. So I wanted to know Middle East of what? I thought all the time it was in Africa, but then being African, we don't think too kindly at times. And I had to take a map and show my good friend, the moderator, that Egypt was in fact in Africa in spite of the canal dug there. Well, why is it that Egypt was not in Africa quite conveniently? The Nile still remains there, however. But Egypt couldn't be in Africa, though I pointed out to them the documented proof written by one of Egypt's great scholars, Hunefa. And he wrote, and I quote, "We came from the beginning of the Nile, where God happy dwell, at the foothill of the mountain of the moon," unquote. In other words, the Egyptians were saying that they came from the beginning of the Nile, the Blue Nile in Ethiopia, the White Nile in Uganda, at the foothills of the mountain of the moon. Kilimanjaro means mountain of the moon in between Kenya and Tanzania, and Renzori mean mountain of the moon, and that's in Uganda. So the ancient Egyptians themselves, without having to look for anyone else, told us exactly where they came from. And I don't think you could find a better place where Maspero's group came from. One of Europe's first historian explained to us what the Egyptian looked like, and others. Quote, Herodotus, of course, in his second book, The Histories, otherwise called Euterpe. The Egyptians, the Colchians, the Ethiopians, and Nubians have thick lips, broad nose, woolly hair, and they are burnt of skin. I think he must have been talking about Harlem or Bedford-Stuyvesant. There is some other thing that's more important that we should talk of, because when we think of the United States, we think of it in very flourishing terms. And we particularly speak of the Judeo-Christian background of this great nation. We seem to forget, and of course the Judeo people too, seem to forget, and by the way, I have to say, I know that I may not look Jewish, but then if your parents came from Ethiopia and you came from Ethiopia, from Gondar, the Jewish community, and you don't look like me, you wouldn't look Jewish either. So, you know, I just have to make this straight before it gets some wrong interpretation, and then have to ask Dinkins to disavow me. Well, it would seem that there would be no synagogue service. There couldn't be, or any Vatican service, or even Muslim service, were it not for Africans who presented the concept of monotheism. There was no Moses around. We don't have Moses until about the 18th dynasty, if in fact there was a Moses, because there are no records left in Egypt anywhere indicating a Moses. But let us say that Moses did exist. Akhenaten died before Moses was born. Akhenaten historically is Amenhotep IV. And he died, as I said. His cousin who co-ruled with him, Sennacherib, died. And the man who was ruling at the time when Moses was supposed to have been born was Tut-Ankh-Aten, who later was changed to Tut-Ankh-Amen. That would put us to about 1346 before the Common Era. And Moses speaks of the one and only God, Akhenaten speaks of the one and only God, Aten. We take that now and we take the fundamental principles which the school speaks about, the moral law, the ethical law, which is commonly called in this culture the Ten Commandments. And of course we had major production from Hollywood dealing with it, not seeing myself anywhere in there. We saw Moses is charged with committing murder, killing the soldier of the Pharaoh. Of course they don't give the name of the Pharaoh. Aaron is charged with hoisting a few dimes from the treasury. So we have theft and murder, but it takes 40 years after the charge of murder for Moses to arrive in the Sinai Peninsula to receive 10 commandments, 2 of which are 1, no murder, 2, no stealing. Somebody must have had a law against both of these, since Moses was charged with them before he got them from Jehovah. Whether he dropped them on his foot or not, that's another question. So we have right there the fundamental principle upon which America is based. We are given a presentation of a symbol of a woman with a blindfold, with a sword and a scale, and the Supreme Court of the United States, and we are pretty close to the law building here. But then we are presented as if this is a European document or something from Europe. Had we not gone, because nobody was going to tell us, had we not gone to Egypt to see for ourselves, Goddess Ma'at holding a scale, level, by the way, not one up and one down like in the United States. I'm talking about justice, you're talking about just this. We would not have known. And many of us came up in the classroom from elementary school, and we take out the dollar bill, and when we could get one, things being so bad as they were, and we look on the green side, and we saw there the ever-seeing eye of Horus, when Horus lost his eye symbolically with the fight against his bad brother Typhon. We were told it's the evil eye. When we look further on that dollar bill, we notice the symbol of the sun, Ra, the burst there, and then the building, the house of fire, the pyramid. And we were told we had nothing at all to do with this, that they were built by the Hebrew people. And quite a few days ago, I was there seeing Brother Edwin, before he was removed from City Hall, came over standing on the pyramid and said, with the photographers there, this is the building our ancestors built. And I didn't know he was a real close cousin, that very close to me, because I wanted to know how could his ancestors build it. And the last pyramid was built in the 12th century, and Abraham, the first of the Hebrew, was born in the 13th dynasty. I don't know, you could build a pyramid before you got born. It's very difficult to understand. But then, you know, being African, we don't think too well, and I had to give my thoughts back. Now, of course, if we build one of the small ones, let's concede that. At least the first one, designed by Imhotep, an engineer, was in the 3rd dynasty. That would be more than 2,000 years before the birth of Abraham. And of course, those that most people like at the Akhet Khufu at Giza were built in the 4th dynasty. That's the one by Khufu rather, his son Khafra and his grandson Menkaure. Of course, they give them Greek names. Everything got Greek names turn around. This is the tragedy, and I just had to deal with a few, of our education. And when Dr. Carter G. Woodson started, quote-unquote, Negro history, one week, we have to give him a lot of credit for foresight, though he only was able to get 1 week from an alleged African school, Howard. It's still alleged, by the way, because Howard University eventually suspended the man for attempting to start a course, not starting a course, attempting to start a course on African history. I understood they now have one course in Howard you must take if you are to go through there as an undergraduate. And the board of directors are mighty proud that they have a solitary course that you must take, and they got European History 101, 201, umpteen 01, and all of them that you have to take. When you consider that when we are to hear the first of the European writers, namely Homer, given to Europe its first entrance into the written words, in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and in the Odyssey he states that even the gods Zeus and Apollo came from Ethiopia. I had to do a double take because, as I understood it when I was much younger, that nothing good came from Africa until the missionaries got there and civilized us out of everything we had. I looked further in other documents to find to what extent that I was luckily civilized, and was decided I should look at the philosophers because I wanted to be philosophical. And so I thought that the best one to go would be the first of all. And so I went back in the 600 and started to look at the pre-Socratic philosophers and the post-Socratic philosophers and find that everyone came to Egypt. One of the superstars, Plato, spent 11 years there. And there would be no Socrates were it not for Plato. As a matter of fact, Plato got us going crazy about some place called Atlantis. Said that when he was in Egypt, those Africans would always give secrets that they're not entitled to give out. They told him when he was there about Atlantis. And since then, they're writing all kinds of things, don't know where it is, but writing about it. When I look further down, I look in to see where I place in these 28 days. Because I must look clearly and safely to find medicine. Now, that's a very important thing. I don't think none of us would like to live in this area without a good hospital, especially having to come out the subways. And then I wanted to know who gave the world the concept of medicine. Very important. And then I heard it was some fellow named Hippocrates. But I said, that's a pretty long time to wait to find some way to cure somebody all the way down to 333. You mean people were bleeding to death all the time before that? And I looked carefully and found that a man named Imhotep, and then looked at the pictures and statues of Imhotep, and I said, you mean the soul brother did this too? So I had to examine Imhotep quite clearly and find that it was no mistake that NYU knew it was Imhotep. That in the school here, when they're teaching the history of medicine, they knew it was Imhotep. But they wouldn't teach it. Why? I had to ask the question. Didn't they know? Didn't they read Hippocrates himself, the Hippocratic Oath? When he said, I shall practice medicine according to the teaching of God, I'll heal to healing art. That's where you get a healing art from. And others, including Asclepius, the Greek name for Imhotep, which he later, and the other Greeks later, call him the god of medicine. But African children had to go through school, from pre-kindergarten all the way up to the post-PhD, including NYU, without ever hearing any of this. All we heard is Tarzan and Jane. Tarzan something without Jane. And, you know, the Ten Commandments without us, and Samson, Delilah, etc. Then we can understand why the assumption was that we could put 28 days enough. Of course, we get a little extra, and leap year, we get 29. If, in fact, we really want to deal with Malcolm X, please forgive the word. I know it hadn't been sanctified with honor at Washington, D.C. yet. But at least we could deal with Brother King. If we add Garvey and we add Du Bois, and God, no, never, or Robeson. We were dealing in the modern context, and we can't fit that in 280 days, much less 28 days. So I need to go back to understand when the Africans, how is it that the Africans from the Nile Valley and the Africans from not only the Nile Valley, but the Africans from the Niger Valley could have been treated as such. The Nok culture. When we as African people did the British when they came to West Africa, and the Romans when they came to West Africa, and when the powers that be in Rome decided to send, namely Pope Martin V, decided to send his groups to capture Africans on the coast and bring them back to Europe as their private reserve. Didn't he understand the role of the African in his own church? Didn't Martin V foresee there would be an Augustine to write the fundamental principle which every one of you Christians in here learn from? It is Augustine, an African man, who wrote the fundamental principle of Christianity. As a matter of fact, he messed up the whole world with his problem in sexuality. After 72 years, I know I'm 70, I know Augustine was wet. After 72 years, he said that if a man has sex for the purpose of enjoying it and not for making a baby, that goes for a woman too, of course, that it was a sin. Poor Augustine lost his brain. Nevertheless, it is Augustine that got all of you thinking like he did. Augustine had lived in every whole house he could think of in the nation of Numidia. He had taken up Numidia and gone over to Carthage, and about done Carthage, then slipped down to Elia in Italy or in Rome, did in that too, and suddenly something didn't work anymore, and Augustine's mother came to him, dropped dead there in her excitement that he had joined a new religion, which was called Christianity subsequently, and that he had to go back home because the Lord was punishing him for that worthless life. He lived in a whole house with a prostitute and had his only child, Abuquita, with the prostitute. And then his mother died, and he said, the Lord is getting back at him. And Augustine finally wrote one book, The Confessions. Not being satisfied with that because the Lord was keeping up close with him. His son Abuquita died. And then he knocked off another book fast, even faster than me. And he knocked another book fast, and Augustine came up with The Holy City of God. And wrote 47 books. But what guides modern Christianity is this African Augustine. And don't let us talk about social justice, because social justice, we hear Aquinas and all of those. Social justice didn't come from any one of them. Social justice in the church came from the man that the church would not give the title bishop to. And we hear very little about him because he wrote all kinds of labor laws for the justice of the people coming to the church, Tertullian, who fought the church. Of course, Cyprian, the bishop of blood, as it's commonly called, was the church man. And he wrote for the benefit of the church. But I've just tried to deal with that. Of course, in all this, there was an African woman, or three African women, that dealt with it to set Christianity and its current course, namely Nymphano, Perpetua, and Felicita. We have to look in that, and we have to present all of that with what we are doing. We have to look at Rome as the African played a major role there in terms of Honorius, the emperor of Rome, Septimus Sever, another one, and Septimus Severus' son, Caracalla. As these three Africans played a role in shaping a major part of Europe. But even before we go there, to deal with the Periopatetic school, the school when Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedonia, came to Egypt around 332, having no understanding of the complexity of the African societies along the Nile, namely Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. The type of government, the type of, they're talking about democracy. I mean, Greece didn't know what democracy was. 2% of its population can open its mouth, the rest can't say a damn thing, and you're talking about democracy? But then when they look at the orderly society in Egypt, along the Nile as a matter of fact, and we look at that carefully, noticing the kind of documentation that the Africans had done, not only on the papyrus, but dug into the stone walls that are still there now, the type of architecture. And then we are told in architectural classes today, such thing as Roman arch. There's no such thing. When Ramesses II, he died in 1232 BC, there was no Rome, no place around. And then you should go to the Ramesseum, the funerary temple of Ramesses, still there and see those arches you are now calling Roman arch and Gothic arch and so forth arches. Then go to the temple of Hatshepsut. A copy of her uncle's temple, Mentuhotep. By the way, these are considered of the Negro pharaohs, they call them. And yet, all of this fact, and none of this had been taught in any manner until around the 1960s, when this institution, as much as others, including Cornell, of course, was about to be on fire. Then, of course, all of us suddenly knew to teach. And then you got a glutton of teachers for a little while, and administrators. And they seem to have done very well because many of them have been promoted. I must do this in 28 days. Since we are near law, and I'm sure that we can go over the various documents on law, the papyri that are in the museums in Egypt, London, England, and in other towns, in Berlin and other places, and of course the Louvre in Paris. And of course we can't forget up the street here at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art, which when I asked them if they have any display on Africa, they tell me yes, upstairs. I said, what's up there? They said primitive art. So I asked them on that, what's that there? And they say, oh, that Greek art. I said, that's not primitive? And so I reminded them, look there on the right wing, isn't that African art? The lady said to me, you're sorry, sir, that's Egyptian art. I had to ask her, isn't Egypt in Africa? And she said, oh no, it's in the Middle East. I had to understand this because as I further examine our brothers and sisters and they come to these marvelous institutions and become apadapa and bapalapa, don't sit on a table. I mean, they're sitting with somebody who, both of them live in the same apartment complex with roaches dancing and rats jumping over each other, and come down here to get bapalapa and fee-fi-boo and moo-ni-shi and all that kind of stuff. Can't suddenly think they're transformed, not knowing that the people that get all this from came to their ancestors and got the concept of lodge. When they wrote in Delphi, on the Temple of Delphi, after they had done sack, when Aristotle and others had sacked the Grand Lodge of Luxor, taking the materials they had, that which they didn't keep and still for themselves, placed their name and other things, Aristotle writing 1,000 books by hand in a good 10 years. Ink pen. Plato writing about the Peloponnesian War with winged steeds and chariot, and the water, running, the horse on the back, went fast on the water. Well, that Jesus walked through and the water started against the winged steed and the horse could run on water too. We've got to look at ourselves as what's happening in this educational function that we're supposed to be caught up in. Is it going to be behavior modification and all these different high-tech words and ignore the fundamental background from whence we come? Can we start with just thinking of elections and so forth and think that the African American will suddenly change, the image will change? Unless we address these common fundamental things, that which made the society what it's supposed to be, you cannot divide the African from there. When we go to Washington, D.C., the greatest symbol of Washington, D.C. being the Washington Memorial, which is nothing but a concept of an African statue. As a matter of fact, the penis of Osiris. Washington Memorial is nothing but a penis. The story goes that when Osiris had fought his bad, evil brother, God said Typhon, that Typhon hung him the first time, and then his mother, his sister, his wife also, went and brought him back, and Anubis, the god of the dead, resurrected him for the first time. He caught him a second time and murdered him again, chopped him up into 14 pieces. The Nile catfish ate one piece, his penis, and so when he was reassembled by Anubis and his wife and sister, Isis, and her sister Nephthys, there was not that piece. And thus she ordered that symbols of his penis be built. And the people got to remember the same concept which the Christian took for Jesus. Not that his penis was taken, but the use of it was denied him. And our people ordered to remember that as a sacrifice. We seem not to forget in this story, there was the third thing that happened, the Immaculate Conception, the concept of the African people, symbolizing sexuality in its totality. When Isis is supposed to have gotten pregnant without the benefit of Osiris because his penis had been lost, Isis became pregnant by a resurrected penis. We go to the resurrection, which Amun-Ra had done for her because she had beseeched him so that she could become pregnant, so that if her husband was killed again, then her son can take over. And Isis became pregnant by an immaculate conception. It is shown there in the temple of Abydos, a bird, an angel, sitting on the penis, the resurrected penis of Osiris, receiving the sperm. The early Christian chopped out the other scene, showed the bird going, because in 1939 it was still there. So the bird going, carrying the sperm into Isis. Isis, the next scene, which is still there, sits on the birthing chair, elongated breast, pregnant, and a large stomach, giving birth to Horus, her son. We are not told that in the churches, with the story of Mary and Jesus, that there are 16 such immaculate pregnancies and deliveries, and that the first one took place in Africa. When the church, before Rome got hold of it, the church which started in Alexandria, we are to believe that the missionaries came and saved us in Africa, not realizing that the Africans gave Christianity its foundation in Alexandria with Pantheus and Boetius. As a matter of fact, it was not even called Christianity then. It was just called the followers of the fallen one. It was not until Antioch in 212 that we hear of Joshua Christos, Christos, Joshua the Anointed. And of course, Constantine took over the whole power of the Asian African Church at the Conference of Nicaea. Yet we have seminaries, and we have them among African schools too. Like Morehouse have one right across the street from it that teaches African Americans to be ministers, like Jesse Jackson, having no idea at all about its African backness. Like when Martin Luther King went to visit Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, had no idea that he didn't need to see Gandhi. All he had to read is read the person that Gandhi read, read Akhenaten, who taught nonviolence long, thousands of years before the birth of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who in South Africa refused to sit in the same car with Africans. All because we were denied our history. And since we don't know our history, we must act, as I say, in the dark. And the funny thing is, when you demand to know this history, people say, you are trying to segregate yourself. You believe in separation. How can you separate from something you never was with? I can't practice separation. I have never been with anybody here. And if I try, they move again. So we must deal with a set of realities that what is mine culturally. The other day, and today, I listened on the radio. And in Europe, the tribes are really going mad. All the Germanic tribes are killing up each other. I don't know if they start to eat each other yet. And all the Albanian tribes are eating. And then I said, which one is this tribe? The who tribe and this tribe? And then they said, no, you're wrong. Anticipated what I was thinking. It's not tribes. There are ethnics. The ethnics of Georgia fighting the ethnics of Georgia. Suddenly, they're not tribes. But let the Brooklyn blacks fight the Canarsie blacks. They got some down there. Fight the Bedford Seven. Immediately, the tribes, the Igbo tribes being killed out, not tribes, even I said the Igbo race, being killed out by another Nigerian race. Let a short African fight a tall African, and two races of Africans are fighting each other. But we're going to get this straight in 28 days. One has to actually be honest with ourselves to understand what America has to deal with, and which it is not capable of, it seems, because it has occurred it every year. And we are not willing to deal with it by saying to America, you are obviously incapable of changing this. And because everybody is telling me now they're against quota system. But I remember reading the Forward magazine and the Freiheit. I read the Hebrew, you know. And I remember they used to talk about proportional representation. Oh, that's a beautiful term. Proportion, you must get according to your amount. So now I don't go around beating around the bush. I say quota. And don't care how you look at quota, it means proportional representation. But when I am to get from somebody who may have a little bit more than his proportional representation, that he don't need anymore, then I am called reverse racist. Now, I don't get a chance to be in first gear, to go forward. They got me in reverse already. Everybody's going forward, I got to get a reverse. Nobody asked me when they were telling me where I supposed to go after my alleged freedom. The mere fact that I had to threaten Lincoln, that's honest Lincoln. I had to threaten him. That time my name was David Walker. My name was Henry Highland Garnett. My name was Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. I mean, Lincoln didn't give nothing to. Lincoln was worse than the others, because at least the others said what they meant. Lincoln was a double-tailed, tongue-tying liar. And we don't want to deal with it. I remember when I was small, they dressed me up, nice starch, white clothes, white shoes, white this. That's the only time I got to be white. And I'm going down the street, knowing that I'm going to turn white by the time I reach, singing the songs of Lincoln and Washington and Jefferson. And then when I got bigger, I found that they had the biggest slave farms. Can you understand my chagrin? And then I said that those guys were like Goebbels, Hitler, and Mussolini. And people said, why you said? I said, how come one slave master is good but another slave master is bad. How do you figure this out? Is it because of my high visibility, my density of melanin? Or is it because I'm a human and my response to slavery should be like anybody else's response to slavery? Yet NYU asked me not to be that delicate. I got a touch on my shoulder. Cornell asked the same question. 4 of them, all of them asked. The funny thing is, right down there, I got to deal with them because they said they're black Harvard. Imagine a black school. This, what happened to us is so bad that Howard University, that presented some of the most prestigious scholars, can't be Howard University, the great school. It has to be the black Harvard. And somebody else has to be the black Yale. That's how bad the absence of our history is to us. That it makes us take on the shadow. There was a dancer, 2 dancers, one white and one black, and one used to dance at the shadow. I can't remember the name. But in this case, the master died before the shadow. So the shadow couldn't dance anymore. And we're still in that position. The shadow can't operate until I remember that when we were in the forefront of dealing with foods. We control food, we can even control food during the time of George Washington. There was a fire not too far from this place, in a place called Francis Tavern. It literally burned almost to the ground. But the firemen saved the photo, this white family, Francis, so that they could have at least a symbol, since it goes back to the days of Washington, when the White House was downtown. But then J. Rogers had to bring their memory from the congressional record that Francis had come here from Haiti, San Francis, and his daughter, Phoebe Francis, was the one that saved Washington from being poisoned by his bodyguard, Thomas Hickey. And nobody gave a big parade for Phoebe Francis. Nobody thought of her in the public school system as a hero. Poor girl, she should have not saved George if she knew. She probably did not know his record as a slave master. But nevertheless, it's not in the history. Yes, it's their record then in Congress if you're doing some research, and you will find it. Or J.A. Rogers, and many of us didn't want to even deal with J.A. Rogers because he didn't have PhD behind his name. He had no D's at all. No S's and no M's, and no S's, A's, and whatnot. So he could not be tolerated because the system which punishes us did not yet say approve. We did not get the ritual of MS, BS, AS, and all other things, and down to the PhD. Now, when you got the seal of approval, you are kosher. So they always ask me, what happened to him in the process? We stamped him. We put him through the mill. We put him in front of the committee, and he still acts like this. I'm one who got away. I wasn't processed right. The point is that I know that 28 days can't tell the oldest history of the world. It can't tell the oldest people thus far. I said, listen, because you told me that when I am documented, be very careful that I can't be upset. So therefore, I'm going to use my CAs, period, or C period. The oldest people thus far, and I'm not talking about Lucy, because nobody in Africa named Lucy. I am talking about Denknesh. We are talking about an Ethiopian woman, so how the hell she get the name Lucy? Her name is Denknesh. That's what the Ethiopian calls her, and that's what she is. Denknesh, 3.2 million years old. Doesn't Eve look mad when she see that? When the two of them meet, if they ever should meet, Eve gonna feel bad about that lie they've been telling. And then, of course, Adam got to deal with Hatshepsut's Boise, 1.7 million years. And you know what they're saying now? Don't mind that. Those are us. That's what Desmond Clark of the university over there in California said, that the European, listen, the Caucasoid and the Caucasian preceded the Africans in Africa by 25,000 years. Not, this ain't 28 days now, brother. You're talking about 25,000 years. Even the South Africans are saying that now. You have to accept this. When are we going to challenge these things? When are we going to be in a position to have our historian, other than our historians, to write and clear up the act, as they say in the village, about what the truth about history is? For instance, now I'm hearing them admit how they sank the Maine in San Juan Harbor and told the American people for years the Maine was scuttled by others. It's now time you can tell it. That is the reason you have an Orega. Because you didn't tell the truth about why there's a Panama. You have a Orega because there was no need for a Panama. You made and created a Panama, and you need a victory, and since you couldn't have it in Vietnam or nowhere else, you had to have one in Grenada. That one looked very bad. United States invading Central Park. And now you get the big bad man, you arrest a man with a local criminal charge in a state, in a court that have no jurisdiction based upon your own law system, a head of state, whether you like it or not, bring him into your country, and then we got to look at the composition of the people of Panama. A mass of Jamaicans and Barbadians building the canal with the indigenous people, otherwise called Indians. Poor Columbus didn't know who he was. And then here we go again. And if we had known our history, we would be protesting, and Colin, what's that fellow name? Powell would not have had a plan ready before the president did it. He would have been sent, but this my people is doing this too. You see what it is when you know your history? And you can't get this history in 28 days. But nevertheless, we got to do something, because the others come behind us who may know it is. I have to tighten down now, I understand. What are we saying by all this? What would we saying for the next 27 days? And even when we sing a song, what do we hear when our folks sing, "I'm a coming home"? Does it mean going to Harlem, to Bedford-Stuyvesant, or going to West Africa, going to East Africa? I'm going to dance all over heaven with my shoes. Did it mean where? Lancaster, Pennsylvania? They didn't know any heaven there. They didn't know none in Georgia. Why should they want to dance in Georgia? They told you where they were going because they named their church the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African Baptist Church. Yeah, Jesse Jackson had nothing to do with us calling ourselves Africans. This is the third round that we're calling ourselves Africans. It was Frederick Douglass that drove us off the course when he was mad when Lincoln got him a beat-out old widow, throw her on him, he grabbed her and married her, plus a little job. Then Douglass suddenly started to get chicken-minded, and Douglass went to resign from the American Colonization Society in Philadelphia, and then went there and said, gentlemen, he's got a job. Gentlemen, I'm resigning this institution, because he said, how can you call me black, or how can you call me anything like that? He said, because after all, my mother is a black woman, and like that, and my father is a white man. You must call me colored. So Henry Highland Garnet, not known for being his likeness, did say to him, Mr. Douglas, a donkey is the father of a mule, but you don't hear the mule bragging about the jackass. You see, but we carried the colored thing all the way up to a few days ago. Then we went to Afro this and Afro that. We finally getting home to call ourselves African-American. One day we will call ourselves the way it was. They didn't bring African-American on the boats. Afro-American didn't come on the boats. Colored folks didn't come. Chickaboo didn't come on the boat. Of course, they even got young black people calling each other nigger on the train and thinking that they're smart. And we are not saying anything to these youngsters because now it's in vogue. But I want to ask you, if you see a rabbit crawls up into an oven, hot or not, and the next morning you open the door and see some little things crawling out, miniature, you don't holler, Mama, the rabbits got biscuits, because they were born in an oven. Then how you become anything other than African, because an African woman came here and gave birth to your grandparents. The only reason you became that way is because you didn't know you. You didn't know when you sang Go Down Moses, it was not go down, he's already in Egypt, he can't go down, if in fact he did exist. You had no concept that when you're talking about Tihaka in 2 Kings, the second book of Kings, you're talking about an African king in Ethiopia going to save Israel from Assyria. You're talking about 714 before the Christian period, or the Common Era. No concept at all. We can't deal with us because we don't know us. And if you don't know us, you can't love her. And if you don't love her, you can't make her your wife, because she too is African. And that's what we got to deal with, Brother David. I'm so glad you're here still. I didn't expect you to make this long. Because the program you picking out, man, you travel in dangerous grounds. You must know your mojo must be working, brother. But coming down home, I could have probably done this in speaking about the indigenous people here. I hope we have at least 28 days for the people whose land we all occupy. I'm surprised to find that anyway you can't find any so-called Indians to pay their way to prepare them for NYU. We are on Indian land. And it's about time that those of us who were forced to come here also think of that man, because we are on his land. I wish that one morning they said they got miracles. How come God don't work a miracle when in the morning the Indians are in charge with all the modern weapons killing us, all of us, from the president down, chasing us the hell out the damn place? Why not? We too have forgotten the man we used to run to. The Seminole Wars was caused because of us. The captain who wanted to go with the African wife, the daughter of the head of the Seminole nation, that caused the Seminole War. the Great Walk, Carolina to Florida, and the many other indigenous people who saved us when we ran away from the master. And the Indian asks, what kind of people? What kind of people are they? We just saved them, and here they are with their buffalo soldiers fighting us. And we call the buffalo soldiers heroes. They weren't heroes, they were punks. They didn't stop to say, these people saved us from the same man we are fighting for, that we can't even have an officer among us. Let us deal with our history. And when we deal with it honesty. Deal with the phase that we made blunders so bad that we spit in the face of those that save us for those that persecuted us. And let us use the word Holocaust with an S on the end, not just ending with a T. Because you have to remember that when Mussolini came to Ethiopia and was killing us, what they call Falasha, we call ourselves Better Israel, nobody cried for us. We were like the book that was written in Harlem, The Invisible Man. We're still invisible. We're invisible when we performed the first open heart surgery on a kitchen table in Chicago. And it's not taught at the medical school for NYU and by East River, because my name was Hale B. Williams then. And when I saved you from running in the back of another train before General Motors stole my patent, and I had to go to court, and I died, my grandchildren died before my great-great-grandchildren got it. No, because my name was Woods, Granville T. Woods. And then a guy named Edison robbed me, steal. They say he produced a bulb. Then we have to check out Olin Latimer to find who it is made the filament other than who made the casing for the bulb. But we are accustomed to that. Perry, we had to take him 25 miles, land him down on the North Pole, because his foot had all but gone. And he don't say anything about it till he think he's going to croak. Then he says, oh yes, Matthew was the one that really reached to the pole first. We've seen that. We see that when Keith Steele, the University of Chicago, master Egyptologist, held back the facts until Williams, his student, revealed after his death that he had been sitting down on the information that without a doubt proved the Nubian origin of Egypt. You going to do this in 28 days? I've been trying to do this from 1939 to now, and haven't done anything with the crust of the ice, much less to break it. I say to you in closing, Ma'at, the goddess of peace, the goddess of justice. And she sits here all over this room in various age, various shades of darkness or blackness. In her honor, Ma'at, I give this lecture. Because when all is done and the big argument today of whether the woman should keep the baby or not keep the baby, I must remember Hatshepsut in taking over the job as Queen King had her scientists and whatnot to make her a suppository to stop pregnancy, now called the Ebers papyrus, the shrub of acacia, and honey which break down into lactic acid, used in autogenal jelly today to do the same thing, trap the sperm over the ring of the diaphragm. And that was in 1550 BC. The first woman to rule independently by records. To understand her. When you do this 28 days, let us do this 128 days in honor of the African woman. Let us, because she's the one that take the guts I'm not going to be semantically astute. She take the guts and puts the shit out the guts. You don't understand that French. And then clean it. Force the water out of it, because a man needs protein. She tenderized it, found bushes and the papaya leaves to tenderize it. Wash it for about 3 hours, then had to cook it for another 4. And put her hand in a boy's mouth so that he don't speak at the wrong time, because he knew his father, she knew her man couldn't speak. At disadvantage, he had fought for hundreds of years, he fought war to resist what had been going on. And she said, no, this is the time for me to defend my man folks. And she told her daughter, you go to school. You see, he doesn't understand. It took him more 28 days. He doesn't understand why she has the education and he doesn't. She doesn't understand why she got the education, he doesn't. She doesn't know it's historical that when he couldn't go to school because he was working from sun up to sundown, Mama said, you go to school. The ministers, the Jessies and whatnot, don't know the purpose of the school, the church school, is not to get us to heaven, is to help and make us free. The freedom train, as Harriet Tubman spoke about. The fool jumping up on the thing there, think he's to jump up there on that pulpit. No, that there was so that we could put our nose to the air hole. They fill it up with water so the dogs can trace us coming down the aisle. And who's singing? The sister, with her wet clothes, also adding water to save her man. And now the associate of this has told us, Talcott Parson, before he's get away, before Billingsley had his nonsense, that is a war between the brother and the sister. I don't know what brother you're talking about. And then they say, the brother can't find himself a good woman. Where you looking in the whole house? My problem is not finding a good African sister. My problem is getting away from so many African sisters. I am crowing tonight, yes. I am preaching. I'm in the mountain top crowing not to see Jesus, not to see Allah, not to see Jehovah, but to see the little boy don't go to crack anymore. The little girl don't get wasted away anymore. And I ask you to do the same, to let her know that when she look in the mirror, do the mirror test, that she, not that Jesse, I'm somebody. You got to be damn stupid not to know you're somebody. But to know the value of which she has as an African sister is no less than the value of Isis, or Makeda, or Nzinga, who fought the colonial forces at Matamba for 13 long years at the head of our troop. Dahia, who fought the Arabs from the time they came there with the jihads in 638. Or Asante Wa, who fought the British and others to defend the soil of Mother Africa. So I say, my lecture is dedicated to the African woman. Thank you.
We're going to take 20 minutes for question and answer period. And before we start, I had promised the brother who's outside selling books, he has
I think I will be reminiscent, but I saw a friend in the audience who you know, and when he stands up, I'm sure that you will recognize it. Will you take a little bow, brother?
Good evening, everyone.
Now that you said and you clapped, do you know who he is? Yes, the television takes your clothes off. Nobody can hide. Even with the fig leaf. Yes, sir?
Okay, there was the name of the university that you said that was the first university that actually existed. Where is it?
The university, if you deal with it in terms of the first school of education, was at Saqqara. S-A-K-H-A-R-A. It is also written from the Arabic context, S-A-Q-Q-A-R-A. It was called a lodge, a grand lodge. However, if you deal in from the Western terms, the university system will be in, there's an early Western type university that you could say would be the one of Djenne, D-J-E-N-E, D-J-E-N-E, and that one, what Saqqara would be Egypt. Djenne would be in what was in ancient time, ancient Ghana. Djenne was destroyed in 1291 and was rebuilt as the University of Sankore, S-A-N-K-H-O-R-E, in Mele. Mele became Mali. Yes, sir.
Yes, in Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of Black Civilization, he mentioned that one of the first invaders were the Asians and the Berbers. Exactly who are these people and what did they look like?
That's the thing, you know. The food we eat, what we ate was just fruits and apple. You know, it's a ridiculous thing how we do these things. I saw a Puerto and a man. What was a Puerto? It was man, woman, child. I'm not you, but they said Berbers and Asians. One is a continental group of people, and one is a designation of one little group of people. I'm going to try to deal with what I assume he means. Asians, yes, the Hyksos, a group of people living around the Oxus River, a tributary of the Euphrates, invaded Egypt in 1675 before the Common Era under Salatis, the leader. They're also known as the Shepherd Kings from Bedouina. They invaded the Delta region and went as far south as a place called Avris, A-V-R-I-S, the 13th dynasty. They destroyed the 13th dynasty and created what it was called the 14th dynasty. They ruled Egypt from the 14th dynasty until the end of the 16th dynasty, because it is then that the lords from the south, Camus, came and started the defeat of the Hyksos to push them out. Camus' son, Amos and Camus. Well, Amos took over the fight. He was quickly killed. His son, Thutmose I, the first, took over. After his death, his daughter, Hatshepsut, Makari Hatshepsut, took over. That would be the 18th dynasty, and subsequently his daughter, her son, Thutmose III, finally pushed the first foreign invaders out of the continent of Africa and the state of Egypt. The gentleman in the back.
Yes, I'd like to know if there are any historical records for most of the stories in the Bible, and also are there historical records for the existence of Jesus Christ?
There are no historical records for all the stories in any Bible or any religious belief. What people fail to understand is that religion is based upon the collection of certain materials. They could be factual and non-factual, and they are. They're based upon the myths and the allegories, as well as the truth factors of the society. Religion is the deification of culture. And then when you get gods and goddesses and the likes as the central figures within that culture. For instance, if somebody suggested the other day that Martin Luther King be added to the Bible, and a number of people jumped up, including Africans. No, no, no. Why not? The people in the Bible are no better or no worse. You got thieves, murderers, all kind of things, and good people in the Bible. Man, you got rapers in the Bible. You take for instance Abraham. If you want a nasty character, pick out Abraham. I mean, let's start with the first one. Abraham can't get his wife pregnant, Hadassah. We call it in English Sarah, president. And after a while, he's 85, she's 18. No wonder he can't find the place to get her pregnant. Anyhow, she finally, disgusted with his bubbling around, she said, look, go with Hagar, the servant girl. Now we know how much a servant girl in ancient time have the right to say to the master who feeding her clothing and everything, no, I ain't giving you none for master. No, he raped the girl. You would call it statutory rape in the United States. She had no choice. It's just like a knife around her throat. In those days, it is as bad as you put a knife around her throat. So she had to give it up. Then when a child comes from this, and the child is growing fine, and they're around there, Sarah playing with the child as much as Abraham, nobody know how much Hagar got a chance being the servant. Sarah got pregnant by somebody. They say it's Abraham. Well, let's see now. If he's 85 when she's 18, her first pregnancy, she's 80. My God, you talk about delayed menopause. This ain't delayed, this is forever standby menopause. Her first child at 85, and you tell me that's history. You could keep it. If her first is at 85 and she was 18, let me see my math quick. I'm old now, you know. 1885, that's about 67. 67 add to his 100 and his 85, 6, 14, 150. He's 155. The first one. And they went on and had a few more. I mean, you know what the Bible is unless you don't want to think. But you say, God could do anything God wants, but it ain't God getting it, having there. It ain't God and Mrs. God. I mean, we got to be reasonable. Somebody asked me, what do you think about the God business? Said, God, if there wasn't any two people, Adam and Eve, God got Mrs. God pregnant, because I didn't want him to say that I said God shacking up. And nobody wants God to shack. So I give God a chance to get married, but who marrying him? Ain't nobody to marry him. You see, you can't think in that term because you're scared stiff. They got you scared like hell to think. And so you got to accept any crazy statement. Bible or not, the Bible got some crazy things in there as well as some good things in there. No, the original story about Jesus, there 16 such stories. You could buy one book and get the 16. The 16 crucified saviors, by Kersey Graves. But of course there are many more others, those that he had listed at that time. I think he wrote it in 1887. And you will see all of them. Jesus is the last of the crucified saviors. The next to him was Bacchus. So it's not, but the people used to press that you don't know that this story had been told in various cultures before Jesus. And he's nothing but Osiris and Horus in transition. I think I should promise this gentleman.
Can you tell us about the origin of the Coptic Church?
The original Coptic Church started by Pantius and Boetius in in Alexandria, or what was then called the city of Alexander, later became Alexandria, without having to say the city. It's in northwest Egypt and the coast with the Mediterranean. And that was called the Great Sea, or the Sea of Sighs. That, when the transition came with the Byzantine period, the period just between the quote-unquote end of the BC, bringing into AD-CE, or after the Anno-Domini, or CE, the Common Era, Christian Era, a group of people who bolted from the Hebrew church, the Hebrew synagogue, Hebrew temple, to set up a conflicting religion. It's like the Reformed Church, Reform movement, and the Orthodox movement, the conservative movement that still exists, that the different degree of getting away from the fundamentalists. And this group with Pantheus, led by Pantheus and Boetius, started to deal and became a separate unit from the synagogue, and eventually started to take identification. They did this in a place called Coptos, K-O-P-T-S, or K-C-O-P-T-O-S, Coptos. And the people, that then the movement was called the Coptic, the people, Coptics, and the church Cop. And that's the beginning of the movement in capsule form.
I would like to know how many black pharaohs there were, and how come the rest of the pharaohs, the dynasties, were there actually black, or was there some intermingling with some of the tribes? Because as far as I know, there is no, I mean, apparently most of the pharaohs were not black. I would, it's always puzzled me how many black pharaohs there were, and what about the rest of them, all these dynasties?
Now, as you know, when you go to the museum on 79th Street, I went to the museum 79th, 81st Street, I will take the position you took. But I will ask the museum, why is it that they only show the Middle Dynasty and the New Dynasty? Why they only show the what is called the Greek period, which started in 332 with the invasion of by Alexander, the son of Macedonia, son of Philip of Macedonia, and don't show the earliest dynasties. It's rather unique. I would equally ask, if I said to you, in spite of the many Africans there were in ancient Greece and ancient Rome's history, the few that there were emperors and the few leaders they had in Greece, and ask you the question, I will suggest to you that they were in fact black in Greece. You would say that I am not dealing with the obvious facts. So then I'm going to ask you the obvious facts. Since the record shows from Hunefer, and you must quote Hunefer, I know one place that have a copy, and that's the University of Syracuse library, so there I know you could find it, that they came from the beginning of the Nile, and I said it before. That means they came from where the northeast tip of Manikongo, now called Zaire, Uganda, Tanganyika, southern Sudan, southern Ethiopia, Kenya. They came from about there. Who would you think came down from there? I give you again Herodotus' statement. And why do you go to Egypt and see those pharaohs with saucy lips and beautiful nose? It's not just to kiss the other lips. why would Herodotus, the first of the European historians, describe them as I did, and further added, I know she was an Egyptian because she looked like the black bird of Dodona. Why would they say that? Is it that you want it to be so, or that you have historical document showing that, or that you look, even at the statues, I can carry you there. Let us take something else more appropriate than that. At the rock-hewn temple of Ramesses II, the largest of rock-hewn temples anywhere in the world, there are 4 gigantic statues of Ramesses. And I can remember, if you have any doubt of them being from Harlem, then you're not seeing well. And next thing is, I recall hearing a group coming from the Bible land, George and so forth. At Tutankhamun's, I go every day to the museum practically, because I live in Egypt, I go back and forth. And I heard a group, a goodly group, coming through, and the guide is, there are Tutankhamun, there are 2 statues of Tutankhamun watching each other. And the guide said, this is Tutankhamun. And one fair lady said, a guide? And the guide said, yes. And she said, but he's jet black. And the guide said, yes. And she said, why they put him like that? She said, because he was like that. She said, I refuse to believe it. And the guide said, stay in your ignorance. Now, if you know the history of Egypt, and the history of Europe, and the history of Asia, history of what is called the Americas.
So Tutankhamun was black?
The only reason is because his mother and fathers were. Well, I suggest that you see his mummy, or I suggest that you see all the artifacts in which he is shown, and he is shown black. Mentuhotep is shown black. Mahapa is shown black. Queen Thoya, the mother of Ramesses II, is shown black. Let me see, but like Mena, which you call Nama, which Herodotus called Menes, is black. You know, I know it sounds funny. If I was from the moon and I came down here and see these Africans and then read American textbooks, I'd be surprised if anybody that did anything good was black. I discovered it in 1939. At least England. I went to England on a boat. Of course, there was no plane. As a matter of fact, when Pan American was going around the world, I wish it could go broke. When it was going around the world, they had a goose amphibian that blacks couldn't go. Don't care how much money you had, you couldn't ride in it and be black. And I had been, I grew up in Puerto Rico. That's where my mother was born. My mother is Puerto Rican, and my father is Ethiopian. They met in Spain. And you don't have to be Puerto Rican to be in the language, right? So, when I went to England, and my way to, I came here to Columbia to get into school to study anthropology, but they weren't letting blacks take PhDs in that subject. You could take EDD, and you could take Doctor of Divinity and so forth, but you couldn't take subjects up. They weren't Negro subjects, and you couldn't take them. That's Columbia. At Columbia, Jews couldn't get certain subjects either. Flower Fifth Avenue, you couldn't be a doctor and be a Jew there, and different things. This New York wasn't what you see. It's the Brown Isaac Bill the Stanley Isaac and Earl Brown bill that make a lot of this change. So for those of us oldies, we know a lot of things that a lot of people think we don't know. But anyhow, you see, I missed the point that I elaborated.
Tell us about where you got the education other than Columbia. Going to Europe.
No, the basic theme. Oh yeah, and I went to England on my way. I went on these tramp ship, going here, there, go back here. And so I got up there, and I'm in England. I'm doing this. And Bobby, the police came and he said, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm discovering London." He said, "You must be deaf." I said, "No, I am the first of the line of the Josef Ben-Jochannan ever in London. And I came to claim it for the Ben-Jochanan." That's how, when Christopher Columbus, that's the Columbus boy, when he got lost and thought that Cuba was Cipango, Japan, came to San Salvador. He had never been on the continent of North or South America. He knows nothing about it. Didn't get a name from him, get American Vespucci. Then he went to Puerto Rico. Then St. Croix, which Puerto Rico was not called Puerto Rico, it was called Borinquen. Then he went to Aye, Santa Cruz. Original name was Aye. He went back and said he discovered these islands. The people was there watching him discover them. I mean, if I come in your living room and discover $1,000, you know, we got to be reasonable and understand the semantics of the conqueror against the semantics of the conquered. History is generally written by the conqueror for the conquered to read. But when the conquered free themselves from the oppression, it becomes then the duty of the conquered to correct his history by going back and accepting nothing the conqueror wrote, reappraise whatever is possible, and you could speculate like he did the rest. This gentleman and the next gentleman.
Yeah. Could you just briefly touch on, is there a relationship between the mystery systems of Africa and the Yoruba culture and the four positions of the sun from the Dahomey?
Let me just do it in a certain way. I will not go into total detail, okay? Take this. In this, forget the chain. This is, don't ask me where you could buy it because you can't buy it. It's made by certain people and it's only given to certain members. Okay. This is the ankh. It's not a cross. It symbolizes the key of life. Symbolically, when one dies and one has two bodies, two souls. You got the heart soul, which is called the Ka, and the spirit soul, which is called the Ba. The heart soul remains with the body. This is our thought along the Nile. And the spirit souls go to receive the symbol of continuing life, continuous life, everlasting life. And this is the ankh. Then you have the loop, from whence one comes, symbolic of the egg and the sperm and so forth, that anneals into one. And then it's connected to an angular material carrying every one of the angles of the great or the largest pyramid, the one of Khufu. Then you have the ever-seen eye of Horus. Then you have a chenou, which Westerners call a cartouche. Cartouche is French, and this is not a French object, so we use the proper name chenou. Then you have in here the Medunecha writing, the numbers, 100, 100, 100, then 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It's 6 tens and 1 and 3 100 signs. That's 360 degree under the sun, over the moon. Then you have not a Magen David, a Jewish star. You have 2 inverted pyramids. There was no David yet. It's called the Dark Star of Egypt. On the opposite side, you have the quarter moon, the first quarter moon. It is not an Arabic sign from the Muslim. And then you have 2 beetles, the dung beetle, or scarab. Why the scarab? Because the ancient symbol, a beetle went in the earth, or the cow dung or dung, the grass dung, and didn't come out until 28 days. The ancients believed that he died and then resurrected from the dead on the 28th day. That's as much as I'm going to tell you about it, and the other side we leave alone. Now, some of these signs and symbols are equally in the Yoruba religion. For instance, Yoruba religion has the ankh, but only in the center they show the sign of fertility. The Yoruba religion, the mythology states that they came from the Nile. The religion is exactly the same in its pantheon, the religious, the deity, pantheon of the deity. Not only that, for instance, they have the same structure. Oloram, Olodumare is the father of the others, and so forth, okay? You have the virgin birth thing and everything. All coming, and when you look at it, it's exactly what they have along the Nile. But if you go further among Ngai, Ngai, in Kenya, you would find the Agikuyu, plural. Kikuyu one, not Kikuyus. There's no such thing. Plural in African language is made in the beginning, not at the end. The prefix, Agikuyu, dealing with that. If you go to the southern tip of Africa, the Amazulu, not Zulus, the Amazulu. Zulu 1, Amazulu Muna 1. They have the same thing go. What has happened, it seems, that men travel the Great Lakes down north, not up north, because it's the land, the topography, the land goes down, and down south from the Central Lakes, and with it he carried some of his basic symbols. These symbols here, every one of them you find among the Hutu people, which the British came and called pygmies. You find it among the Kalahari. The Dutch call them Hottentots. You find it among the Khoi. The Dutch call them Bushmen. You find it among the Sebenetos. Those are the people they call dwarf kings in Egypt. So what we have found is that the smaller brothers and sisters of Africa and of antiquity carried these symbols around. They were adopted in later time, the Sibyllian period, Sibyllian 1st, 2nd, 3rd, going from 250,000 BC to about 6,000 BCE. And that would be the pre-dynastic period, and then it filtered into the dynastic period. And as it did that, it took on some new meanings and became this for that. It went further with the contact with the Greeks and the Romans, and some of them took on to it. This Star of David, by the way, nobody talk of a Star of David anywhere in Torah until Herzl designated a symbol that they had to use for the struggle against in Europe for national identity. And then, because people used to laugh at Herzl, it was like he had to write like almost like a comedy form before the people started to take him serious. That's why he had suggested that they make the homeland in Guyana, South America, in Kenya, in Uganda, and some other place, and then back in Palestine. Yes, sir.
Hotep, Dr. Ben.
Hotep, sir.
You spoke earlier of the existence of Moses. Assuming that he did exist, what was he and the Jews that he supposedly freed?
There's no record of this. The only thing the Torah says that there was this altercation going on, and Miriam, his sister, became perturbed when he was going to marry the daughter of the high priest of Ethiopia. All of his wives were daughters of high priests, like holy things. So Miriam complained, Torah says, and God got mad about it. That's Jehovah, Yahweh. And he said, look, Miriam, I had enough of your lips. I'm going to punish you. And Moses and Aaron said, please don't punish her. She's a little excited. You know, I'm paraphrasing. And so the Lord said, no, I got to deal with her. And lo and behold, the Lord thy God turned her white as snow. In the case of Moses, no, she was white. And the Lord turned her white. The Lord was a jive turkey. How you going to turn something white? White. Now, in the case of Moses, we don't know if she was green, blue, black, technicolor, or rainbow. Jesse didn't come yet. Now, but we know she wasn't white. In the case of Moses, he think he's bad, worse than Jehovah, even though he dropped the damn thing in his foot. And Moses started to tell, man, Lord, what are you talking about? Lord, I don't believe in that. And the Lord said, look, boy, hush. You got to be a black Lord to be talking that kind of language. That's strictly 125th Street language. And Moses wouldn't hush and said, okay, I'll show you that how bad I am. And so the Lord said, put your hand in your bosom. And lo and behold, I like the part where they go, lo and behold. He stuck his hand in his bosom and pulled it out. And it had turned white as snow. Now, that couldn't be white. It didn't say it was brown, black, red. All it eliminated was white. Now, I got to ask for all these religious folks. The world went to an end except one family. Let's get the scenario down. So we're going to see for ourselves what we're talking about. And this is the thing that got America in tight bands. So it left Mr. Noah, Mrs. Noah, and the kids. And two of everything in a boat 60 cubits long. 60 times 3 is 180 in my poor African math. This building is longer than 180 feet. Now you put one African dinosaur tail there ain't no room for Mrs. Moore or Mr. Moore. But all right, the animals shrunk. They shrunk up just to get in the boat. I mean, hell, that's build or have it. I mean, yeah, all right. They got on the land, Mount Ararat. Isn't it strange that everybody used to have sightings? They saw the Ark and Mount Ararat until they made a helicopter. and an airplane. Nobody else see them no more. The ark just disappeared till the other day a guy saw one. Now, the water subsided. And so they come out the boat. White, Caucasite, Semitic, Noah and his family. There ain't no word called Semitic yet. There ain't nobody. Why you got a word called Hamitic and nobody's Hamitic? They're all white and Semitic. So you can't have a wasted word. But a little fellow named Ham, Ham. No, yeah. His father, but Noah planted vine, the vine root. The same day he planted it, the same night he reaped the vine. This is atomic grape. He reaped the grape, mashed the grape, made wine from the grape the same day. Drank the grape, got drunk, fell down with his testicles out. Little Ham saw it. Watch his father making a jackass out of himself. And then the two other boys, how the hell they know? Tell his father that Ham was stating his nakedness. Daddy said, how come you fellows won? He said, well, we came backwards. All right? And then the Lord helped Noah curse his youngest son, and the curse became black people. That is written in the Mormons book. The Mormons from Salt Lake City and up here, up the street. It's written in the Calvinist book. That's the basis of the Calvinist teaching that caused South Africa to be the way it is. It is in many other books. It was not until 1939 that the last semblance of it in the Godspeed Bible and many other Catholic Bibles was removed. Now, that is, you should read pages 121 to 124 of Hebrew Myths, the story of Genesis written by Robert Fatai and Robert Graves and Graves, those pages, and you see the best demonstration of it. It is still shown in Hebrew books today that rabbis study from. It's still there. How one of the reasons that they did to me was my lips, because I didn't do something, my lips shall be twisted, and because I didn't do another thing, my hair shall be kinky. And this is what I like, and that's why in the South I got it like it. Because I dressed it as a nakedness, my penis shall be shamefully elongated. I will can you imagine? But these things were in the Bible. You ask, why is prejudice? These were written in the Bible and still appear in some Bibles about African people. Then you ask why the people who wrote it, why their children believe it, their great-grandchildren and others. It was in the Bible, and as I said, the Mormons' Bible still have it. And it's the fastest growing religion in the black community, African community, is Mormonism. But if the Ku Klux Klan opened the doors in the morning for blacks, it'd be a mad rush. We want to go see. We got to get a piece of the action. It's sad. So the point, at 28 days they go change it. The point is that we have to understand in these 28 days the significance and the depth of what's happening to us. And the sad part of it is that many of us have taken this thing hook, like and sinker. You're going to understand it. If I come up, just stop and see. If you come up in a society where the people are beaten down and they can't remember hardly anything. When your mother whipped you, she said, boy, I'm going to bust your ass until you get to Timbuktu. Now, she doesn't know anything about Timbuktu. Somehow, as Hatshepsut said, the carryover. somehow Timbuktu was carried in her family till it get to her. She doesn't know what Timbuktu is. She doesn't know the significance of Timbuktu, yet she's using an African term that she may not have even come from, but someone came from. We have our Uncle Remus stories. We don't know that they're connected to the Brunancy stories because they tell us Uncle Remus. We don't know that Uncle Remus' story is in fact Brunancy's story. And other things that, so we lost what we had with us. We lost the identity. And because we did not know our identity, then others said, the way we were told by historians, that's the way we are. And then we accept and be sorry for the way we are. It's like, I remember I used to have argument about the dresses my mother's people wear, loud colors, and how the colors, and I used to be ashamed when I was younger. And then finally, I got into grow and ask, what's wrong with my mother's people liking loud colors? They come from a hot country where people are mobile. They dance, they sing, they do it for everything else. I went to New Orleans and saw them doing a big, doing the mob and all those things down there at the funeral. I said, Dad, this is a good funeral. I could deal with that funeral. They said, the other day I went to a church to be a sister, and I see, they said, Christianity is a happy thing. I go into church, Lord, we've been good, Lord. I said, what's happy about this? I mean, if it's a happy church, you should be doing the funk and the dirty, what's it, dirty something and the other thing. Now here's another thing. All of a sudden, because it's our dance, it's dirty. The waltz was dirty once. What more dirty can you get than a waltz? You ain't going no place fast. And if you know to do anything, you should grind then. Yes. Run's Cross was a that started origins in African. No, sir. Nothing at all. Thank heavens. We are not crazy. Run's Cross was an African German who started the movement, taking a lot of things out of Christianity, mix it with the teachings of Akhenaten, and comes up with something that got people going crazy all day long.
So what exactly is it about? What do they do?
It's about fantasies that people hope. It's no different than any other religion. That they take certain belief, various concepts of belief, and they try to equate it to certain aspects of Christianity and the teachings of Akhenaten. It's a belief system like any other system. You don't literally believe there was nothing at all. If you got nothing, how you gonna make something? There was nothing, and God, as soon as you say and, you stop nothing. You added another dimension, therefore nothing no longer exists. And God stood and made out, we got made. And God said the word. How you gonna say the word? You got energy then. It's a belief system. All men, and then you notice something, these are all male stories. You think a woman will be crazy enough to write a story? Eve, you think she'd be crazy enough to write the story that a baby came out of Adam's rib cage and she got a fallopian tube? Huh? Is it logical? And you think Eve is going to accept a story that say that the reason she got pains when she gave him birth is because of her original sin, having sex? She would say, well, all right, if they said so. Adam getting a little 2-inch diameter piece of stool, little hard, didn't drink enough water, and he crying about that. She get taking a baby with a 5-inch diameter head, driving through meat and bone. That's why she crying. Ain't got nothing to do with sex. And if Adam had something, a little piece of thin membrane over his rectum, and somebody tried to drive something in it, he'd cry too. We got to use our head, and not because something is written someplace said, okay, women don't write the Bible. If women wrote the Bible, Eve would not have been the sinner. She would have been the hero, because that stupid Adam is staying there. Eve is, how the hell you can't see? I mean, Eve is, unless she's twiggy, Eve is voluptuous looking there. Adam got his white, they got 2 eyes, he suddenly can't see. At least he could feel. And he come upside Eve, and Eve bump into him. And he said, oh, you got titties. Or you got bumpers or something. And he noticed that he got to little spots. And then he tried to, little children, he experimented trying to find what this is all about. And then nature start, what this got to do in this? You mean God is going to make Adam and Eve with all the essential for reproduction. Then God is going to say, go out. Multiply, replenish the earth. And they get mad when they get together. And then talk, well, he's a jealous God. What are you jealous for? And then God said, let us make man. Us who? Jesus? Jesus is a man. He ain't gonna get pregnant no how. Don't tell you how he tried. God can't make Jesus pregnant. It don't work that way. The scrotum don't lead, no.
Clarification on a period in Jewish history. Reading some books, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right. They refer to it as the High Coast period. Hatshepsut, okay. I was reading one text, and they were saying that that's when Joseph entered into Egypt, and he, was in the Pharaoh's house, and there were, biblical texts.
By the way, there's no record of a person named Potiphar who was prime minister anytime in Egypt.
Okay, so what did you account that period for?
That is a hypothesis. There was a Hatshepsut period, and they don't even have much data on the Hatshepsut, otherwise called Shepherd Kings. I said that, and that would be around the 13th dynasty, 1675, 1675. Give 100 years one way or another for the sake of errors. Manetho is the first person, the high priest Manetho. When the Greeks came there, they wanted to know something about the history of Egypt. The high priest, the only one that was left after they killed out all of them, Manetho of Sebennytos, living at Sebennytos, which is the northeastern part of Egypt. Manetho was forced to write down Egypt history. And he started with the Sibyllian period and so forth. He is the one, but he didn't put dates. He put so many kings, like 10 kings, in this is the first dynasty, he called them, divided into family thing. He said, first dynasty, 10 kings, second dynasty, 2 kings, or something like that. You add up the amount of days, years per kings, and you will get at the end the total amount of years, the total amount of kings. Now, when the Romans and the Christians decided that this is a turning point, the beginning of Christ, the establishment of a Christian birth, or the Christian era, or the birth of Christ, you change the calendar and you start now, a new calendar starting for the birth of Christ. Anything before the birth of Christ is BC, anything after the birth of Christ is AD or CE. Now, what you got then is 4100 before Christ, or now it's 1900 after Christ, 1990 after Christ. For instance, the Muslims did when after Muhammad ibn Abdullah challenged the religion in Mecca, and they had to escape, run away, and outside of the city of Medina they established the religion of of Islam, of the oasis of Yathrib, they established a new date. One, before they had Muhammad escaped, the Hajira, and after the Hajira date. Now, these are the same thing that happened. The Hyksos came at that period and destroyed that. But since their culture, they were a nomadic people who used the horse, and they caught the Egyptians off guard, so to speak, infiltrated. Many of them came in for work and so forth out the desert. They had a museum in Cairo, so we don't know much from the Hyksos period. The best king list you will see is the one at Abydos, the one in the temple of Seti I, the father of Ramesses II. And he refused to put the names of the Hyksos in the Shenus. So we don't have too much. Anything you hear about the Hyksos, speculation. I understood this is the last question. Yes, ma'am? Yes, I'm sorry. This is the last question I understood. Then you pick on the last person. I'm not going to think of this person.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, Dr. Ben, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. And I want to thank you for dedicating your time with us tonight to us black women. That is really very special. What's going on in Egypt. Anyone who keeps up with you, know that you're traveling back and forth constantly to the motherland. And tell us a little bit about the Nubian Festival in '91, please.
Well, as you know, my residence is now Egypt for the last 2 years. I always intended to. I went the first time in 1939. That gave me an opportunity to speculate on my age. December 31st, my mother, it was my mother's birthday. I don't have a birthday. No, because I was born, I didn't do anything. In my culture, it's my mother's birthday. And if she has 15 children, she has 15 birthdays in the year. Mother's Day is 50, amount of birth she gave. That's amount of Mother's Day she would have a year. I have to sit down, I kneel down to my mother when she would live and press my face to her womb right here, and then she would talk to me, tell me the bad things first, what she didn't like about it, and probably cough me up a few times, and then tell me the good one and anoint my head with oil and say, get up, and then you can go. Well, I went back to do more research, to finish a number of works I was doing, and of course I didn't plan to add more. You can't help adding more as you find new things. I have the only African team in Egypt. I say African meaning Egyptian and Ghanaian and everything. I have a few Nubian brothers and Egyptian brothers. For the gentleman, I don't know if he's still here. I have 2 men that look exactly like me. As a matter of fact, they are brothers. They have the same father, the same mother. One is Egyptian and one is a Nubian. You ask what is the difference? One was born in a territory called Egypt, and the other was born in a territory called Nubia. So that's it. They don't have a term for race. It doesn't exist in the language. I got this group of brothers who are digging, so I have the only African team. Of the 47 other teams, they're from as far as America, America, Russia, Japan. Now Japanese got a digging team. And they were trying to make a pyramid and they didn't fail. I am working with the Nubian thing. Why? Nubians are like African Americans in a sense, equally Egyptians. Egypt doesn't have a present Egyptian culture. Egypt runs under Arab, French, English culture. Nubians are second class. nobody would want to admit it. But I'm getting Nubian culture into Egyptian society. So I work closely with Nubian people, and I support a village. I have a village, I don't brag about it, but those who go to Egypt with me know they've come there and see to it that, for instance, the money I get tonight at this lecture is going to the village. It doesn't take much. I can live on just the pension I get, the Social Security. And I take care of 3 daughters, adopted daughters. Now the first girl from a village is going to medical school, one of my daughters. Doesn't mean they are not Nubian doctors, but they came from cities. This is the first time one comes directly from the village, goes back to the village, and is going to be in the village when she becomes a physician. I work with that. I work now with some research between Sudan and Egypt, because I am tracing the Nubian origin of Egypt. I'm also working furiously in the temple of Mendulusi, God Mendulusi, which you don't hear much. Egyptologists carefully avoid dealing with Mendulusi because he was the older brother of Osiris, and he's called a Nubian god. Yet he's a brother of Osiris and brother also of the twin sisters Isis and Nephthys. Bes, again, is considered a Nubian god imported into Egypt. So I'm dealing with what I'm trying to declassify in my writing. What is Nubian and what is Egyptian, because there is no such thing. It is one of the same. You can't distinguish between because what happens, Nubian artifacts are older. You got the same Isis, the same Osiris, but they're older in the Nubian territory. More reason to, the thing about the growth of the civilization coming down the river. I'm also working, I did some work with Al-Azhar University. I taught for 1 year the Faculty of Languages at Al-Azhar at the NASA campus, NASAR, not NASA, Abdul Nasser. It's a section outside of Cairo at the university there. The headquarters of Al-Azhar is religious studies, and that's in the Kankahili area. So I did 1 year there as senior linguist, specialist in language. And now I don't, no longer at the university. I was volunteering. I didn't get nothing with transportation. That's a whole year. So now I carry trips to Egypt, tours, educational tours. I don't do tourism. Would buy anybody been there? No, you work. You get up. You go to the ring. We got 2 tours in July, 2 tours in August, and 1 in December. And one of the things I'm working for with the governorate, you say state here in Egypt, there's the governor, and what would be a state is the governorate. I am working with the most southern governorate. I've worked 2.5 years trying to get them approve it. It's now approved. What we are doing is to get in a group of people together, a commercial venture, along with the government of Egypt, and in particular the southern governorate. We are going to deadline, the target line is the month of August each year. There will be a Nubian festival. All that is ancient Nubia and modern day Nubia will be in the governorate of Swan, where most Nubia lives, and you will see all of the culture, everything that go to the villages and so forth. It'll be 1 month. We'll be doing that. And I have a certain few individuals who's getting other individuals to do this thing, and it will not be like Trinidad in the term of the jump up. You're not going to have any jump up and things. This is strictly going to be, there'll be Nubian plays and different things at different places. So we can accommodate as many people as will be coming, and it's to be a yearly thing. So I'm working strong on that. I am finishing out my office we had to move because of rent. Over 2 years I didn't have a place, and luckily I now have a place to establish the New York office again, where we will be training tour leaders. There are a number of people coming now, never been to Egypt one day in life, read a book and a half, and now they become authorities in Egypt. And they're literally robbing the people they bring. So we found it necessary to train tour leaders, because at 70 I'm not getting younger. I wish it was. And so the arthritis is getting a little funny here and there. So I'm going to do less of field work in that respect. And so I'm doing that. So I'm doing a few other little things in between, but I'm running back and forth between the continent and here, trying to encourage. We're trying to get some teachers also to work in Aswan area in English. You don't have to know Arabic. The students you're going to teach know sufficient English to deal with you, and you pick up your Arabic in the same. So we are trying to get some teachers. Of course, they must have teacher's certificate, and to come to Nubia to work. Figured the first thing will be a 2-year contract, and of course the salary would not be as high here, but I'll give you an idea. I live on $700 a month. Less than that. That's when I'm doing something. I give you a bill. I paid 200 Egyptian pounds, which is about 90 American dollars, for the lady that handles my house. Then I have a flat apartment which costs 35,000 Egyptian pounds. Contribution paid for it, which is about 16,000 American dollars. It has 3 bedrooms, a large living room, a bathroom that you could play ball in and all this kind of thing, and balconies and so forth. You couldn't possibly get near that in the States. So what I'm saying to you, there are a few African Americans over there, or Africans. Du Bois' son is there. He comes here in the spring to teach at Amherst. And there are a few other people you may know who also live in Cairo. We're in contact with each other. There's a kind of Cairo connection. And we will be glad to have you come and see us, understanding the restrictions. You can't, a single man can't entertain single women in his flat. Otherwise he'd be expelled from the residence. Equally, like, you don't have single women living by themselves. If a woman's husband died this morning, before sundown, she has to find a place with a senior member of her family, or her old son who's of adult age, to live with, and she must go through another courtship if she wants to remarry. And if she has a suitor who wants to marry her, he can't come to a place of residence after 10 in the evening, and if he's there during the day, her front door must be ajar. Well, I know that it sounds funny, but in Egypt, marriages, especially in the countryside, a girl married tonight, generally Thursday night. Friday morning, the wife, her mother, and the wife of the groom knocks the door. The proof? If the proof is not there, somebody gonna get killed. Her mother is the first person to beat her with a hatchet, a hammer, or something. But she better have good legs, because they're gonna kill her. And the guy, if he did it, or who else did it, gonna suffer some mean stuff. They don't fool around in that culture. So I know you think, and they don't want to hear nothing about riding donkey or balusters, and it's a biological fact. You better run your fact out. So I just letting you know, if a group come, I can entertain you, but individual, I can't entertain you. We have to get the bush, and there's no bush in Cairo. You got desert. So, so you could understand that the culture is very circumspect. Does things happen? Hell yes. Nothing is foolproof. Thank you very much.